Hello, everyone. Welcome and happy Sunday. Today we are talking about Black women and real self-care beyond the mainstream with our health coach, Tonye Burango. I'm so happy to have her with us today. Again, happy Sunday. You know, with the climate that's going on in the United States, the most important thing is self-care, self-love, which can be challenging for the most of us. Today we delve deep into what it looks like other than mainstream. There is a mainstream self-care, and then there is a self-care that is specific to Black women, and this is what Tonye talks about in this interview. She talks about environment and how location is everything, alignment and being in the right energy. We talk about relationships, siblings, and others. We touched on abusive relationships, but honey, we need a whole nother hour and a half to talk about that. Trauma and drama. You know, the things that affect our healing or our inability to do so. The other thing that I liked that Tonye touched on was EAP programs at your place of work and how to get access to health care that transcends physical, is also mental and emotional. We talked about the current American climate and how that affects our mental or your mental stability and ability to flourish in a very restrictive and confining environment. We go pretty deep and we talk about how self-care is more than just going to the gym and eating correctly, although that does help. We delve deep, so stay tuned. Self-care for Black women isn't just about bubble baths and face masks. It's deeper than that. So we have Coach Tonye Burango, who breaks down how mainstream self-care fails to address the unique needs of Black women and what true self-care and self-love looks like. From emotional setting boundaries, from nourishment to rest, this conversation redefines self-care on our terms. Stay tuned for a powerful discussion about wellness, self-care, holistic healing, and freedom. As we join the conversation, Tonye and I are reflecting on our conversation and travel coaching session, and she's just admiring how much progress she's made. So join us now as we continue the conversation.
Notes that I had with you from our last meetup, and it's I'm working through some stuff, and it's good. I have been with doing some work with my therapist as I try to coordinate all this being in a toxic work environment and still trying to balance everything out so I can get my cash flow together in terms of maintenance, because that's as you already know, you have preached it, Cortez has preached it, everyone who lives abroad has preached it. So I have some few potential connections that I'll be investigating later this week. Someone who's already in my chosen space of Merida, so we're going to have a discussion and see how that goes. But that's the only final piece. Don't want to be as much as you want to exit, and you've said that before too. You need to you have to be responsible, especially if it's team one, which is my case.
Exactly. Right.
I have, I'm glad we have such a supportive environment there in Merida, but at the end of the day, you've got to make sure you help yourself as much as possible. And so that's what I'm, working towards. So in that respect, I'm good. It's just cold here in
yeah, you back in the Midwest. You getting hammered out there. I think I saw a few storms come through there.
Well, it is -2, feels like the highest 10 degrees. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. So yeah.
Wow. Oh, okay. Quite a difference from
Merida.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's
I'm feeling
ironic.
for you.
It's ironic because I'm like, the weather is not my favorite. Neither is the environment. And then Merida has the weather and the environment. So if that isn't something from the universe, I don't know what is. But anywho,
Right. Time to go. Past time to go.
Yes,
I feel
indeed.
you. I feel you. I'm so glad you asked me for this interview, because I've been looking at your work and it's really amazing.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I've been to all your links and I'll be sure to share them with the viewers, and just an amazing amount of work that you've done. I think probably from the last time that we spoke.
Yeah, I did. Well, I did put out a recent video, but I think also too from the last time we spoke, because you have and that's why I think it's important that people find people that will help them or whatever. Find people that resonate with you, because that is a powerful motivator, I found too. And so I had you on one shoulder. I had Cortez somewhere forward, poking me too. But what I was, after my conversation with you, I took time to, because I was actually in a healing process physiologically. As I mentioned before, I was having some GI issues that were really, I wasn't feeling good. And the funny thing about it is you can, and I spoke on this before, and I even mentioned this a little in the video I put out the other day, that you can get all of the therapy, do all of the self-care and all of that in the environment that you're in. But at some point, I wrote this in Exodus Summit too, a long letter to Black women in the group. You can do all of that, but there comes a point when that kind of plateaus, just like when you're working out. That's why you have to constantly be upping your routine and adapting that to your body's, strength levels and so on and so forth. There comes a point when that plateaus. And that plateau, and I see, this is one of the motivators too that's egging me on to push forward and do what needs to be done, because I recognize that at some point you can do all the work you need to do, self-care wise, mindset wise, and all of that. But if you are still in the environment that is harming you, it's, you reach a plateau, and then after that plateau, you start having diminishing returns. I don't want to get to that point. And so, it's great that, I talk about self-care and self-love and empowering, how liberating that is for Black women. That's all true. But at some point, that's why I said everybody's got to make their own calculation. Maybe some people are fine with remaining in that environment that they're in. They're just not at the point where they are ready to exit that. But I know for me, I am at that point, because I recognize that the life I want, and that's not just, the trappings of being in a beautiful place or a place that's different from where you were and all of that, all the monuments and architecture of a different culture. It's a lot more along the lines of internally, what is going to give you the satisfaction and quality of life. And the reality is, it's not where I'm currently situated. So, I've had to, I feel like I'm still in the grieving process, because I know I'm going to have to leave some people behind. And I speak of that not just in terms of friends, but in terms of family. I know during my own self-care journey, which was really, I was really radicalized when my sister passed, because it wasn't until then, right? Because I had watched my mom and other women in her group, that burden, that weight of being the center of everything, but being the one that's the most burdened with everything. And no one seems to appreciate that or sees that. And when my sister passed, I had a crisis myself, because I just literally could not. It was just so upfront and in my face. And I was like, God damn, pardon my person. But I said, again, another woman in my lineage, again. And then when I saw up close what had been, because when you're the realities of, being a single person versus being somebody who's married, you might have, your relationships change with family depending on their relationship status. That's a given, especially Black women. That's a given. So
That's
I wasn't
true.
right. So I wasn't privy to a lot of what was going on in her life. And she kept a lot of what was going on from me because she knew what my opinions would be. Because we had gotten into some conversations before and she was applying the brakes like, no, that is too much, So I had to, stop, and, regardless of the frustration I was feeling in those moments, I had to respect those boundaries. So when she passed, like I said, I was radicalized in terms of how much labor Black women are conditioned to endure. And I was like, this is 2000 whatever. This is not 1960s, 1950s in the motherland here in the US of A, where women are, second class citizens. But here we are in the 2000s, and apparently that's still the case. And I recognize that when you don't prioritize your self-care, and I think, and I talk about too, I say too, decolonizing self-care, because the self-care that's out there in mainstream media, that's not for us. Right. That's not for Black folk. And that's not for other people of color. Right. Because that version is so sanitized and so out of reach for most people. It's very commercial. It's very materialistic. You see all these fancy places and all these spots. And I'm like, the average working Black woman don't have time for that.
Able to afford that.
She can't afford.
Don't have the time or money.
Exactly. How is she going to do that? So I was forced to take on things that I didn't, I was overwhelmed myself. And I was like, God, how did she navigate all of this? And so that's when I said, okay, things have really got to change. I thought I was on a self-care journey prior to this. And I was like, this ain't it. I said, I need some real strategies and some real tools that will work for me as a Black woman, given the context that we work 10 times harder for far less pay. So what does that translate into? That translates into less resources. Less resources means you have to use more of your time during any given day to even come up to that. Most of the Black women I've talked to in healthcare, no matter where we are, how many degrees you have, the typical Black woman in the US of A that I know, the average Black woman, I'm not talking about the ones making six figures. I'm talking about the average Black woman. 80% of the population of Black women do not make six-figure salaries.
No, not at all.
And most of the ones that I've spoken to and surveyed, because there was a time I did a survey for healthcare disparities when I was working for another organization. Most Black women are working 2-3 jobs, not because they want to, but because they don't have a choice. So what happens? Self-care, that's a fantasy. That's, that's a fantasy.
It is.
You're stressed out, you're burned out, you're on top of that, you're in a toxic work environment where you're constantly in survival mode. That's not it. So I had to say, okay, let's first of all, let's start doing, you got to do something internally before you can do anything externally. Because when your mind is clouded, you're stressed out and burned out, you can't think clearly or strategically.
No, not at all.
And so, right. And so anybody telling you self-care, oh, go and do some yoga, that BS ain't gonna work. How? You're already in survival mode. You're stressed the F out. You can't think about none of that. You need little tools and strategies. And we Black women, I don't care what nobody say. We have to be strategic. I had to. I became I'm going to confess, I will be the villain of white supremacy when it comes to supremacy in the workplace. I will be the villain. Why?
Mhm.
Because resources that we should have access to, we don't even know about. And
Right.
it's deliberate. I found that out within the last couple of years when I started, listening to you and others, Rashida Dow, Stephanie Perry, when they were talking about resources. They had people on like the anti-HR
Mhm.
strategist and all of that. These are everyday resources the people who are employees are entitled to, but they do everything to put barriers in place so that you don't know about these resources. And it wasn't
Exactly.
until I started learning how to access these resources in my own organization that I started adding to my self-care toolkit, because we as Black women, we are uniquely positioned that we, unfortunately, in this society, we have so many points of intersectionality that we're a special case. That's
Mhm.
why I said, don't put me with BIPOC. I'm not in that group.
Right.
I am Black. Okay,
Mhm.
I am Black of African descent, blackity black black. And our case is always going to be different. There's there are strategies you have to be, safety protocols you have to be put in place to protect yourself in the workplace. I had to figure that out.
Right.
I had to get the resources for that. Thank God I was able to connect with, and this is what I'll say to any Black woman working for any organization: find out about your employee benefits as they relate to mental health and your health in general,
Right.
because that will save your life and save your save your energy. That's how I was able to take the time off that I needed, and that wasn't long enough,
That's
looking back
right.
in
I
hindsight. But it
definitely.
right
Mhm.
it I needed to do that. I had to do that, but I had to put special protections in place. You have things on paper that say they're worker protections, but when it comes to operating these and accessing these resources within your organization as a Black person,
Mhm.
again, you're still going to run into those discriminatory systems that are foundational to this country. So you need to get into contact with people who look like you, who are working for your best interest. You have to find those people. And that's something that the anti-HR person or or someone, as much as awesome work as they're doing in terms of ringing the bell and giving us information, they are saying themselves, you are saying, you have to do the work. They can give you the information in general, but you got to go dig and get that information for yourself. And that's what I had to
Absolutely.
do. I got the knowledge. I got the resources, the overall general resources that, were given to me from, so many helpful Black women online. But at the end of the day, I still had to go do my work.
Mhm.
And I was able to find tools, resources, connect with people. I'm in the process now of changing all of my healthcare providers to Black women.
Mhm.
At the very least, I'm changing them all to people of color.
Mhm.
Why? Because the context of this country has changed.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that's changing. I'm not trying to scare anybody or, cause any alarm, but the reality is what it is. And
It is.
what it is that it's no longer safe. It's not safe for Black women in general to have children give
No.
birth in this country.
No.
Because what happened to Serena Williams and Beyonce at Sinai in California?
Uh-huh.
I know that place. I was born in California. Cedar Sinai, that's
I
where
know
celebrities
Cedar.
go.
Right. We know
And
Cedar.
if Beyonce had trouble up in them streets,
Right.
Serena almost died up in those streets.
Right.
What does that tell you? There
Right.
isn't a day, for those of you who are outside, who live outside the country now, you're not getting, and people got to protect their mental health anyway. You're not getting all the daily news of Black women, suffering, having traumatic birth experiences, or dying. Right. Especially in these red states. Being in a blue state is not going to protect. I'm sorry to say, it'll just, kick the can down the line. It's not going to protect anybody. So when it comes to things, and that's why I said self-care is something that is not just a physical thing. It's a mind, body, spirit thing. And it encompasses so many areas. It encompasses personal safety. I currently have a FOID card. I had to get one because I had a stalking incident at work, which still wasn't taken seriously. Wow. That's a whole nother story. Right. And then, I have to make sure that my physical health is on 10. Why? Because I want to access the health system in this country as little as possible.
Right.
That's a personal safety thing. I'm also having, right. True. When the workplace, you got to protect your job, your source of income. That's a self-care issue. People don't realize that self-care, it encompasses a lot. And the more, my mission is to get more Black women to understand that. And when you start centering yourself and decoupling yourself from all these pseudo obligations of people doing labor, free labor. I can't tell you how many times, I talk about this all the time. And then I had to stop myself. I said, why am I giving people at this job here? Why am I acting like I'm their health coach and they're not paying me? And right. I said, okay, right. It's time, especially after the election, I said, ooh, no free. No, if you want to talk to me any extended length of time about self-care, how to do that, how to strategize that, hit the link and pay me.
That's right.
Then we can talk. We can talk about it.
Right. Because time and energy is worth that. And
exactly. More. And for each Black woman, the situation is different. I've talked to Black women that are in what we would call classic abusive relationships. And that's another thing we have to address as Black women as a collective and heal from, is that normalization of toxic romantic couplings and relationships that put you in danger and your children in danger. And so that's a separate thing too that Black women have to navigate if you're talking about self-care. How do you self-care in an environment where, because you're so financially strapped, you don't see a way out of a household that is toxic in that way? Right. So you need a strategy that's not only going to help you in terms of your health and well-being and mental health, but you've got to have some strategies in place in terms of how do you exit that in a safe way. These are things we have to consider. And that's why I said this, colonized version of self-care, it doesn't address any of those issues. Black women, 1 in 4 Black women and girls, by the time they are 18, have experienced domestic violence or sexual assault. Absolutely. That is a fact. Mm-hmm. So what does that, given that context, how do you create strategies and tools, mechanisms in place to, protect yourself? I'm in, Exodus Summit. I thank God for that group. But there's some young, we've had some young people come in and, so out, connected groups, not connected to Exodus per se, but there's some other women's groups I'm a part of on Facebook, and you got young women scared for themselves and their kids talking about, how do I get out? I'm a healthcare worker, but I don't have that kind of money saved up. That's true. If the average American does not have $1,000 in their savings account, what does that say about the average Black working woman who's not making 6 figures? What does that say about her situation? Right. So thank God for you and Cortez, who are dealing with people who are average people, because we got to get our people out. That's what it's looking like. That's
my everyday plight. Yes, ma'am.
So it, right. But your thing, your gift, your oh my God, I'm just, every time I really think about it, I get emotional, because I was emotional after that too. But I was in a place where I had the time to process that, because it is true. The work you're doing is so important, and the fact that you are accessible is so important, because I know there are other coaches out there that are, yes, they're charging, everybody is charging different fees and rates and everything, but that's what their spirit is leading them to do, and that's the clientele that they're servicing. But the bulk of, I'm just going to keep it 100, the bulk of average Black people who are looking for, especially women who are looking for alternatives, who are looking for an exit strategy for the safety of themselves and their kids, they don't have those kind of resources. Let's just keep it a buck. They don't have those kind of resources.
You're absolutely right.
And so they need, I see going forward, unfortunately, your work is going to expand beyond this. You and Cortez's work is going to expand beyond this, because more and more, you guys are not hearing what's going on, and you're hearing some of it, but the real people, Black people are, they're concerned. I won't say scared, but they're concerned. Women are more aware of the danger than men are, and that's across the board, regardless of ethnicity or race. Women typically see the writing on the wall before men. Why? Because in any situation of chaos, dysfunction, political unrest, social, economic, whatever, who are the most impacted? Women, children, the elderly.
Right, exactly.
And so for generations, and historically, women have had to be strategic and organized. It's just par for the course, because we understand, under this system of patriarchy, misogyny, and white supremacy, anti-Blackness, or whatever, Black women know the key to survival is being strategic, organizing, and keeping your eyes wide open. Because you're going to get got otherwise. Men have something of, even Black men have something of a protection, because they're under patriarchy as well. Yes, they're harmed by it, but they still have a level of protection under patriarchy. Women don't, especially Black women. And going in 2025, I'm not about that life.
I know that's right.
I'm not about that life for myself, and I'm not about that life for other Black women. And that's why I said self-care is foundational to your liberation. Like it or not. And that means starting with setting boundaries. When I started setting boundaries, especially with family members, that's a whole nother story for a therapy session or whatever. Anybody, I had to relearn. Anyone who benefits from your laying on the altar of other people's expectations, of your labor, and your not prioritizing your own self, anyone who benefits, or any group that benefits from that, there's going to be pushback. We see that now in the U.S. when everybody, all the Black women are saying, "Oh, we're not doing this no more. We resting." Listen, see the vitriol and violence. Unfortunately, that's not limited to, the dominant culture. It's happening even in our own communities and families. That's something else the Black community got to unpack, but that's not my ministry.
Yeah, that's a big suitcase. That's
a big suitcase. That's why I said
that's a duffel bag.
Yeah, my ministry does not include all of that. Mine is specifically. That's why I'm specifically team women. Women and your babies, but I'm not. I can't. That's not my ministry. I do not have the bandwidth from that. From on my own, So, this is what it comes. This is what it comes down to, and that's why I'm just so passionate about it, because I know what I went through. I know what my mother went through. I know what my sister went through. I have all of my sisters has 3 daughters. She left behind 3 daughters. Traumatized by her sudden departure, because her body just gave out. That's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
Her body gave out. And I said, after that, I said, no one else in this lineage, no more women in my lineage are going to go this route again. So in order for that cycle to stop, it has to stop with me.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. I said, that's not my ministry. Find somebody else to do it. Because self-care and self-love is all that's here. And as much as we say self-care, self-love, it's not an easy, I recognize it's not an easy process, because it wasn't an easy process for me, and it's an ongoing journey. I had a couple of mental health professionals. I had a coach, and then I had one mental health professional, all three Black women. But even to that, I had to let one of them go, because I saw that a couple of things that she, as we were going through the process of unpacking my own stuff, family related stuff, some red flags started going up with her. And I was like,
with the therapist?
With one of the therapists I had before my most recent therapist.
Okay.
And I said,
she had some triggers?
She had some triggers, and they led me to, okay, you haven't released that. Because when you start saying things that are, how do I put this? That don't center the individual, rather, it was almost like I was getting, the energy I was getting was like, judgment for taking certain stances with my dealings with family members in terms of boundary setting. And I was like, okay. And so from that point on, I started withdrawing from her, and then I finally just cut and said, I won't be back. And funny enough, it was a couple of months later that I believe Stephanie Perry had somebody on, a therapist on, that was saying just because a therapist was Black didn't mean that was the right one to go to. I think it was Rashida. I think it was Rashida Dow that said that. And that is true. If that's something you have to be careful with. If you get therapists and all of that, if you get one that's male identified,
right.
That can be a problem, and that will be triggering, because for me, that triggers a feeling of not being safe. So I can't continue to do the internal work that I need to do. So therefore, that means you need to go. And so that's what I did. And then finally, this therapist that I have now, she was recommended to me from a health coach in my organization, through my organization's mental health resources. And she is top tier. I already found out, because I remember telling you that, that's the other thing. When you're planning an exit, get your health professionals lined up.
Yep.
I've already secured the fact that, she deals with, she's a veteran. So she has a lot of clients that are veterans that are worldwide. So she has no problem seeing patients that live outside the U.S. and things of that nature. So that was important for my healthcare toolkit under my self-care. Don't get it twisted. Start, doing what you need to do. So that was, that's what that looked like. So at the end of the day, I guess what I want to emphasize is, self-care, like any healing modality. And I think that's part of the problem here too, is it's not holistic. And like when I say it's colonized, meaning it's very Eurocentric and stripped of a lot of the healing practices that should be in there. And a lot of indigenous cultures have always understood that the whole notion of self-care and healing also encompasses the environment in which you exist. And it is also not linear. And so when you understand that these processes are not linear and that they're not separated from where you exist, your environment, then that judgment, that shame that can creep in and all of that, you don't get that. There's no judgment there because everybody is understood to be on a journey of healing, and that's something that is lifelong.
That's right.
There's no point where that ends. There are points where you resolve things, you move through, you set processes in place to help you. Like if you have a trigger, if you're triggered by something, you have the tools you need to go back to that place where you still wounded and work through that so that you can continue to function and live your best life.
Absolutely.
And that's what, we need to understand, because there was a point where when I was going through my own healing, that I was getting frustrated when I was trying to lose weight and all of that. And was like, oh my God, what is going on? And then after doing a lot of reading, one great book, The Body Keeps the Score. Woo, child. That is an amazing book because it helped to answer a lot of questions about how trauma, how environmental stress, burnout, things like that impact you physiologically. Mm-hmm. And when you understand, especially as a woman, we truly are the blueprint for all life. We truly are the blueprint because we are the bodies of women are special ecosystems. Not only are we portals, supernaturally are we portals, but our body chemistry is so unique and so sensitive that when we are unaligned, it manifests physiologically. So that tendency to you're like, well, I don't know why I'm not losing all this weight, and I got all of that cortisol,
right,
holding on to will keep all of that fat around you. You have that fat centered all in your body, then that begins to trigger other inflammatory processes. Losing your hair, all of that, edges. Forget about, people doing a lace front wigs and all of that. Forget about that. Mm-hmm. Stress impacts all of that. All of that, a lot of that is hormonal. And hormones, what are they? They're chemicals. They're chemicals. Right. So what is the, if you go back to basic chemistry, when things are out of equilibrium, there's always something negative that happens. And we are so used to, we take so much insults and abuse trying to, in our process of navigating a toxic country, that a lot of our chronic illnesses, got dry throat. Let me take a sip here. A lot of our illnesses are chronic because we've been holding on to stuff. There is no release for it. You can't go running through your neighborhood to jog and get rid of the stress. Why?
You might get shot.
Or you might have a Karen come and ask you, what are you doing here? The next thing you know, right, you can't. It's risky.
It's too risky.
You're never unsafe. And even in the animal kingdom, even when animals are in that survival mode, once they get out of that mode, there is a reaction. There's literally a physical reaction that they're dumping all of that stuff. All those chemicals are being dumped. There's a way they take to decompress. And so when you're not doing those things to decompress, all of that, it's like a snapback from a rubber band. And so all of instead of dumping that out of you, you're internalizing that. Yes, there are some genetic things, potentialities that are more common among certain ethnicities, ethnicity groups. But it is the environment that turns those switches on.
Right.
Stress turns on those triggers. Dementia, all of that. Stress and constantly living in survival mode where toxins in the brain are not given the opportunity to be flushed out because you're holding on to stuff and you're not resting.
Mm-hmm.
That has an impact. And that's why I say self-care, as powerful as it is, there comes a point where that one factor called the environment, if you don't change it in some way, shape, or form, that doesn't mean you leaving the country if you don't want to. But it does mean that at some point you're going to need to change whether it's to go to another state, whether it's to go, maybe it's go off grid. Maybe that's your solution.
Right.
But at some point, in order to complete that healing process and allow it to thrive to the point that you're actually seeing sustainable, good health and feelings of well-being, at some point, you're going to need to change that.
Absolutely.
So,
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a fact. It's not me putting an opinion or whatever. That's a biological fact.
Well, and we often say location is everything, and that means physiologically too. It's everything. You feed off the environment. You either get conditioned or rebellious, and so being rebellious is good if you're in a toxic situation. I like when you said grieve and leave. That's very impactful. And I want to thank everybody who's watching right now. This is pre-recorded, but thank you everybody who's viewing right now. Tonye is giving us a whole therapy session for free. So be grateful that she's giving us this information, because the most of us need it, and the most of us who need it sometimes don't know that we do. We don't know that we do. You spoke about relationships with your sibling that passed away, and you know that I can identify with that with losing my sister just a little bit over a year ago. What we talk about on YouTube channel a lot is about family versus relatives. And I think that it's impactful when you're trying to make a decision to grieve and leave, the letting go that you talked about when it comes to relationships. And for you, from both seats as going through it yourself and speaking with clients that are going through that process with the self-care aspect, speak to the best way to resolve that internally, because we speak on internal work. Okay. That's where it all starts and ends, right? So the labor, you spoke about that. The labor, the women and the labor that we do. So as we labor these relationships with our relatives or family, what is the best advice that you could give somebody going through that? You know what I mean? To kind of reconcile internally, to work through that energy, because it can get kind of thick. I have a lot of clients that is what's stopping them from leaving, is that complete dedication and honor to maybe a person or place that does not honor them back. This is a toxic situation and they need to get out.
Okay. Well, first of all, what I will say, what helped me to really break, I had already started the process. I'm one of my background is in anthropology, so I'm used to doing that kind of analysis and looking at things culturally and all of that, and also my own personal history. Now, in that instance, I would say it is important to have a mental health professional as support. I feel like you just can't get, unless you're special some way, unless you've somehow worked through it independently. A mental health professional is critical. Why? Because there's always underlying issues. For the most part, there's always underlying issues having to do with either how you were brought up as children, things of that nature, cycles in the family in terms of similar kind of contentious relationships that have been cyclical within the family.
Yes, the patterns.
The patterns. And so, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm self-care and health coach. I don't deal with that. I would say, let's find you a mental health
professional. But that self-care is advising the client to seek a deeper mental analysis of that.
Exactly. Because
it starts with you in that self-care to be aware that they have this issue, you know what I mean?
And awareness is where it starts, because even when it comes to professionals dealing with people that have addictions and things of that nature, they always tell family members of alcoholics, what have you, you can't make anybody change. They have to want it for themselves. They have to reach a level of awareness. They say reach rock bottom. So first of all is awareness. And once you have that self-awareness, and that's the powerful thing too about self-care, you can't self-care without being forced into that awareness.
Right.
Because one of those things is boundaries. Creation of boundaries, because you have to create space for yourself to self-care. That's just that's just par for the course. And so first of all, you need to get a mental health professional to help you deal with that. I freely admit, there was a time I was resistant. I thought I could do that, a lot of that mental dredging of stuff. That kind of familial stuff. I thought I could dredge through it on my own, but there reached a time where, because I didn't have those professional tools and that outsider assistance, that I was getting overwhelmed. And so I had to get a mental health professional to help me parse through all of that and work through all of that and dig deeper, without the judgment and without the shame that comes with that, because you're going to have this push and pull internal struggle where you feel guilty for wanting a better life, for wanting a trauma-free and living your best life, for wanting something different from you, which is separate. Part of that process means that awareness has to kick in. Recognizing that you're a human being first, and that in itself is an autonomy that is spiritual and it is yours. Every human being is entitled, despite what is going on in the world, to autonomy, to self-direction, self-deciding for yourself, all of that. And so when you have reached that point of awareness, you recognize that. Now, how do you deal with those feelings of guilt or those feelings of negativity that you're having, because now you're in a push-pull situation where you're having to establish boundaries in order to protect that autonomy, and having to cut, in some instances, either reshape, redefine, or cut certain relationships, because you're going to need you're going to need a therapist too to help you see when you're setting up, erecting barriers versus boundaries. You don't want to erect barriers where you cut everybody off because it's triggering. you're going to have to trigger, in order to heal, you're going to have to trigger through some stuff.
That's right.
And in order to trigger through that stuff, you're going to need a professional to help you navigate those triggers and give you the tools you need in order to address those triggers. Like, okay, so you're triggered by this. Okay, why are you triggered by this?
Right. You got to dig.
Exactly.
You got to have somebody to help you dig through it.
And you need a professional to help you dig through that, because you need to do it in a safe way. There's some people that have, case in point, in my situation where I was picking up on red flags with a former therapist. I was able to pick up on those red flags because, one, I was already self-aware. I had been doing the work anyway. But then I recognized, one, I needed a professional to take me to the next level to really dig and, address issues so that I could move forward. But then I started seeing these red flags that told me, this person might have some issues of their own. I need to move, shift.
And that speaks volumes too, as people seek professional guidance and professional help to notice those things in other people and be willing to stop investing and move on to maybe a better suited, professional to help them.
That's right.
Through their issues, because that's unfortunate.
That's a thing. And self-advocate, that's where, when you're starting on that journey too, awareness also brings that it carries a little bit of learning to use your voice.
Right.
When you set boundaries, you got to speak up.
That's right.
However, whatever that boundary looks like, you got to advocate for yourself. And part of that advocacy means learning to recognize when someone who is in a professional capacity is not operating in a way that is in your best interest. And so I did that, and I was like, no, boo, I'm going to have to cut you off.
I love it.
Period.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Don't stay longer and invest more and get trapped and feel like you don't have any options when you absolutely do.
And I think that's part of, too, breaking the conditioning that we have been, subsumed in as Black people, too. Because there's a certain conditioning we've undergone to survive in this country and the diaspora.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, it has become maladaptive in a lot of instances. It has become maladaptive. And one of those is giving up authority in areas that we shouldn't be giving up authority in. And one of that has to do with our health and wellness.
It's deep.
And as
all the
women,
way to the political arena, what I mean?
Exactly. And as women, that conditioning, child, that's why, not to rain on anybody's parade when it comes to religion, but religious dogma, I had to get out. Yeah. I was in church from the time I was a child, and that conditioning, child.
Yeah.
And it was right. And it was only after really finally saying enough is enough that I realized how abusive that was. And that wasn't, that's not blaming my parents, because my mom in particular, she was trying to protect me. She was trying to grow me spiritually. She didn't know any better.
No, she's doing what she was taught to do.
Right. So when you learn and when you learn better, do better.
You do better. That's right.
But that conditioning, that's another thing for the community, quote unquote, to deal with, but that's not my ministry.
Unpack. Another big bag to unpack.
Right, because that conditioning really brainwashes, zombifies women into deprioritizing themselves and centering everything else to the point of you're burned out, and actually, in a lot of instances, you will drop dead.
Oh, it'll stress you out.
The black woman that was working in the back office of Wells Fargo, she died in that back for 4 days.
For 4 days.
You talk about labor, not valuing the labor of women, in particular the labor of Black women. It's not just this
Particularly.
society, it's a cultural thing too, and that's across the board. I lived on the
Absolutely.
continent. I grew up on the continent. Women were conditioned to accept that level of burden and burnout, saying, "Oh, it's the life of a woman." Say
I
what?
beg to differ. I beg to differ.
Exactly.
Let me see. That reminds me of what was your thing? I love it. I love the name of your podcast.
Undomesticated
The
woman.
Undomesticated Woman podcast, y'all. I'm gonna make sure that we post all of Tanye's information in the description area so you can go check out her podcast. She also has a free Pantry detox guide that I looked at that's excellent. A free self-care health guide that you got to get your hands on. Blog, YouTube channel, bookings and consultations. We'll go all over that momentarily. Tanya, we're coming up on the hour, and I do have quite a few more questions to ask
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
Because you filled me up quite a bit. So, two things I wanted to say in reference to what we just spoke about. Women, I am a decentering woman. I have some men that are on my channel, but 99.9% of my audience are women. So I am a decenter woman. I think we should be centering ourselves and not men. Okay.
Correct.
Another thing is make space for yourself. You spoke about that. You can make space for everything else. Make space for yourself. Also, on this channel, we talk about having fences and not walls. Put up your fences. They can come to the gate, shake your hand, but you have something protective around you at all times. Going to the gym is not self-care. So you spoke about, Tonye, the mainstream kind of definition of self-care. The cover girl, if you
exactly
will. Right? So I want you to talk to us about a little bit on a deeper level, mainstream versus what real self-care looks about, just on a basic level, maybe a starter, a couple of things to start Black women off, all women if they're looking at this, just versus mainstream, the gym, the cover girl, to what it really looks like. You talked about it's full circle: mental, emotional, physical, physiological, psychological. It covers so many areas.
Right.
So if you would speak to that for me.
Sure. When it comes to self-care, the real version for the average working woman, what can that look like? And I'm speaking from the point of view of a mom, let's say a single mom who is working 2 jobs, because I have a number of colleagues. We work in a medical lab, and that is it. That is their story. A lot of them are also, studying, because we love to collect them degrees, because we're trying to improve the income that's coming in, and we're trying to make better lives for ourselves, right? So what can you do? This is some of the things I've told them they need to do. It's amazing what that quote unquote little cat nap will do for you. And years before, way back in the day when I was in my little 20s and early 30s, I didn't see the benefit of a 15-minute quote unquote cat nap. I learned the error of my ways. And there is research to support that if you take, even if it is 15 minutes, and I'm talking about at work, literally. You can do this at work on your break. Now, sometimes you have to make a choice between, do I rest? Do I eat? Can I do both? That depends on the length of your break. But anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, what you can do, because I got from Amazon, I have a little eye mask to block out the light, because that helps trigger the brain to go into rest mode too, when you're not having that light constantly in your face. What I do, I go to one of the offices in the laboratory, one of the conference rooms, turn off the lights, set my alarm on my phone, 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I typically do that either after I've had something light to eat, or before that, depending on my level of tiredness, which means what? You need to self evaluate.
Right.
Am I more tired or am I more hungry? Because if you're more hungry, that's not going to work. That 15 minutes is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you decide, but know that it's okay even if you don't get to it that day. But start having that at the back of your mind where you take 10 to 15 minutes out of your day, whether it's at work or it's at home. Go to a quiet place, lay down, everything turned off, and allow your body to rest. You'll start with the process of hearing your own heartbeat, which sounds really weird, but you'll start hearing your heartbeat. You'll hear that bump, 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 bump. Focus on that. And as you focus on that heartbeat and that breathing, because you'll hear that inhale, exhale, and you'll hear that pumping, pumping, pumping. There's something primal about that sound that is almost like a lullaby for a baby. Where the baby, when you hold the baby to your chest, babies, when they're agitated, they're grungy, they want to sleep. But I used to do that with my nieces when they were, especially the middle one. That child, she didn't want to be in anything but your arms to sleep. And I remember that sound of your heart beating takes you into a rest mode. So set your alarm. 10 to 15 minutes. That doesn't cost you anything.
It doesn't. And you don't have to be at work to do it.
No.
A lot of us work from home. A lot of us have children, grandchildren. We're working with a lot of people in our house. Close the door.
Close the door.
That's
Close
it.
the door.
Put a sign up.
That costs you nothing. That costs you nothing.
That is very good.
One other thing. That gym, I stopped going to the gym years ago when they started getting ridiculous with the prices, and that was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I lost my most amount of weight working out at home because nobody can see me. I can wear my most raggedy clothes. I can be tore up from the floor up to the floor up, from the top to the floor down, whatever.
You're right.
Tore up. I can be half naked, still working out.
Yeah.
I can dance, and that's the thing too. Working out is not something that is, I understand, there's a working out that's germane to athletes, professional athletes. But for the average person, and this is something, that calls back to ancestral way of doing things of our people, both on the continent and the diaspora. I'll never forget. There's this thing of playing games and dancing that is therapeutic in and of itself. You're releasing breath. You're in community. You're exchanging energy. There's a reciprocity where you're feeding off of the positive energy of each other. And there's a healing in that. And there's also connecting with the earth. I'll never forget the feeling this is why I love the smell of wet dirt. It's weird.
I can smell it as soon as you said that.
That smell is something that gives me joy and makes me feel so like there is an ancient African term, and a symbolic term that when translated, it says the earth has weight, and it gives the sensation of literally being planted, your feet like a tree being rooted in the earth and taking from the earth and being filled with life and regeneration. And that's the feeling you should get from working out.
Right. A grounding feeling.
A grounding. And so you can do that. I'm all about the shortcuts. I'm all about being effective. How can you do that? Okay, I don't have time in a day. What do I do? What did I learn from watching my colleagues do?
I love
that stairwell. Stairwell is your friend. There's your stair climber
Exactly.
right there.
Yep.
And you don't have to do it 30 minutes or an hour. What I would do whenever I was going to the restroom, I said, guys, heading to the restroom, go to the restroom, hit the stairs, do the walk all the way up to the top of the stairs, come down, do that for 10 minutes, then go back.
Yeah.
So find ways to work that in. If you sit at a desk all day, start using your desk as, use your desk and your chair to do exercises. You want to do pull-ups and all of that. Hold on, especially if you've got the roller, the rollers on your chair.
Yeah.
Hold on to your desk, hold in your gut, pull back, push forward, get a workout. All of that research shows. And we know this intuitively, but sometimes we need researchers to tell us. It's not you doing it in one sitting. It's consistency. And they said it doesn't matter whether you break it into 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, so long as you get the cumulative effect. And that's what you're working towards. When it comes to eating, you don't need to spend all that money on all that craziness, all them powders and all of that. No. Yes, we do need to supplement because our soil is so denatured that this ordinarily the nutrients that you would get from your plants and all of that, a lot of that is lost. So we do need to supplement. But supplementation outside of vitamin D and all of that, go to your doctor, ask for those labs. And when you go in, if you can only access the physician, through your employer once a year, do your annual demand. This is where self-advocacy comes in. As Black people and people period in North America, vitamin D is a usual deficiency we have.
Yes, it is.
So is magnesium.
Yes, magnesium
so
as well.
Ask for those panels. You'll pay a little bit more for your copay, but go ahead and ask for those panels.
Or you can come to Mexico and get it done for $5.
There you go. And then you can get the directives from the physician. Okay, this is low, this is low, this is low. What do you ask? Next thing you need to be asking. Okay, so what do you, based on these numbers, what do you recommend? What level of supplementation do I need to take? Once you get that, roll with that. Other thing, what I hate is this whole this other aspect of, you asked me this before, the mainstream self-care, especially when it comes to diet versus that. I kid you not. The American diet is called SAD for a reason. The standard American diet. It is killing people. And it is being exported to other parts of the world that typically didn't have health issues. Now they're getting it because they're eating based on American dietary systems.
Right.
And if you go back to the ancestral and indigenous ways of eating, even here in the diaspora, studies are showing that those diets were healthier.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So all those times they told, especially Africans, bring in their food because I'm half Nigerian. So I've been eating these foods for years. And I tried to do this whole dieting self-care thing. That made me so damn angry.
I know it. I was. Especially because of your rich background.
Right.
So you know what to eat. You know which we should be eating. Right.
As a girl, I'll never forget, there was an elderly, she was educated under the British system. She was a nurse, former nurse, retired. She was Nigerian, Yoruba. And she used to talk about home remedies for dealing with the rash and eruptions you get from measles. And how what they would do was that they would rub, to help with the scarring and healing, they would rub the kids in palm oil, palm kernel oil, because it's high in vitamin A. And a lot of the dishes that we cook with that use that nutrient is in there. Why? Because they cook with it. So when you eat food in context, in the right way, food is medicine.
It is.
But when you strip all that indigenous and ancestral knowledge from foods, that's when things go awry.
When it gets sad.
Right. They say don't eat carbs. Don't eat carbs. Oh, eating all this rice. Japanese and other Asian groups have been eating rice for centuries.
Oh, forever.
But that rice that they're eating is not what they eating here. It's not what we eating here.
Exactly.
I grew up eating rice pretty much every day. I was not an overweight kid. But again, the rice that we were eating on the continent is not this rice.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, I remember my sister's mother-in-law would bring rice from the continent when she came to visit. And I'll never forget how one of her daughters was saying the neighbors were complaining about what she was cooking, that it was stinking. What it was, the smell of the rice is different when it's cooking. It smells very earthy and almost nutty. And so I'm just going to keep it a buck. Colonizers not used to a lot of the fragrances and aromas of indigenous foods. That's why the Chinese food that you have here, it's not Chinese food. Even when you go to the so-called Little Chinas and all of that, that's more authentic. But if you eat what they eat there, I've had food cooked by colleagues that were from their, they cooked like they cooked from their homeland. The way it smelled, the texture. That's why I said I can pretty much eat anything so long as it's good. Because as a kid, I had to learn to do that. Some foods, your palate has to be trained and all of that, but eventually you begin to crave those things. But this food here is very chemical laced, and I'll never forget too. To this day, my brother-in-law still doesn't eat a lot of beef here because he says the texture and taste, which is true. I notice it too. That's why I tend to buy, when I do eat anything that's bovine, I tend to eat imported goat meat, things of that nature, or wild game, because the meat doesn't taste like it should taste as meat.
Right.
That's just
being over in Mexico. That was the biggest difference. Was the texture and the taste in the food. We're over the hour mark, so I want to ask this one last question.
Go ahead.
With the political arena, you spoke a lot about seeing your physician, having a Black physician, being in a network of Black physicians, and reaching out to them, whether it be physical, mental health, emotional health, if you need professional mental care or physical. So you talked a lot about your diet and going to see the doctor, and we talked about that before when you were here with my doctor that I referred you to, and how you were having some discomfort. And how a lot of that is related to the stress and the food from the States. Right now, the landscape is changing quite a bit. So you talked about working in a company and reaching out to HR or beyond HR to connect with physicians that can be able to help you and get you the care that you need. Because the DEI programs have been heavily affected by the orange ones' decisions to cut these programs and cut finances to lower to minorities and low-income families who otherwise would have access to these programs that allow them to see the mental health specialist, to see the dietitian at least once in your job. You get one visit a month, right? Most jobs I know where I used to work in corporate America, they had one psychological. You could go to get, I think it was 3 sessions
It's
that
6.
they would
It
pay.
depends. 3 to 6.
Right. They paid for 3. And then you got like 60% or whatever you had to pay to continue to seek therapy or seek help. It makes me sad to say, but this is the truth, that these type of programs and initiatives are being dismantled. There's proof of it. Paperwork is being signed.
Right.
They're moving full force ahead with dismantling anything that has to do with minority, BIPOC, or Black people, or people of Black and brown descent. I was reading yesterday that it has hit the EEOC, which was one of our hugest advocates when it came to minorities in the workplace. My uncle used to work there many, many years ago. So that really hit hard. So I want you to kind of, if you can, address the find your folks, is what I wrote down, type of research you can do outside of your organization. Or a lot of times in your company, if you have healthcare, they'll give you the option to go out of network.
Okay.
Even if you have to pay out of pocket, it still gives you the opportunity to seek out of network while not damaging your, your plan or whatever. So due to the landscape changing with minorities, whether you're in business for yourself or if you work for a company and you're seeking some type of health care, what are some of the things that you would give us that we could do? Along with in the mindset of being an advocate for yourself and speaking up for yourself. Hey, I need this. A lot of times I think we don't even know we have access.
That's true.
Even if DEI hits some of that, it may be some things that survive under the radar, but they won't tell you about them if you don't ask about them. So I think that's a strong point for you. The advocacy and how to ask and what to ask for.
First things first, get familiar with your company's website. Period. Point blank, period. Wherever you work, whether it's a McDonald's corporation, whether it's TJ Maxx, whoever owns that, JP Morgan Chase, whatever. Get familiar with that. Go under it. You should click under HR, and usually these resource links pop up. Start with the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. Most organizations have them or some form of that.
Yes, they do.
Okay. And you want to go under there, and then that should give you a list of quote unquote free employee benefits they have there. That ranges for mental health, that ranges from, they even have seminars, webinars, videos that you can watch on replay for mindfulness videos. But I think for a lot of us, we're going to need to go beyond mindfulness videos, right?
Right.
So you can also access health coaches and mental health providers, period. That's the route that I went through. Go through EAP. That's your starting point. They typically even have a, if they're really on point like they should be, they have a link, not a link, an app that you can access, because that's what we have at our organization. The bigger organizations tend to have more robust versions of that. Okay, but even if they don't, they at least have something that you can start with in terms of employee assistance programs. That's required by law. What I will say as a caveat to that, be proactive. The sooner you start, the better, because we don't know how long this is going to last. So jump on it now. Access those resources while you can now, because wherever our people are, I'm not going to elaborate on this because this is the internet. This is for our people to understand and know. You know how we know how to read our own subtext.
Absolutely.
I've had guides within the system that have said, do this, go here, go that. Your job, part of your assignment, should you choose to accept it, just like Mission Impossible, is to find those people in the organization. Now, most of the organization pages, especially when it's the healthcare side, like you need to access physicians, mental health providers, you can literally filter for BIPOC providers, because I did that. You can literally do that.
That's
so
good.
Find, it doesn't have, if worst case, if you can't even find a Black person in that BIPOC provider, find a BIPOC, find a person of color provider. Typically that will be your safest person, and you'll have to fill them up a little bit more than typically maybe you would a Black provider, but at least get that going. Then the next thing is, I'm sorry to tell you, as much as we all detest Meta, we got to work with what we have.
Exactly.
You're going to need to get on Facebook. Find supportive groups like Exodus Summit. You're going to have to find Tia Niki's groups, Cortez's group, because we have professionals from all of these types of areas, mental health providers, specifically doctors, lawyers, who are in this group because they understand our people gonna need help.
That's
and
right.
You're gonna need community to do that. There are a lot of aspects, going back to mainstream self-care is very isolating. It's very isolationist. It's very colonial.
It is.
But self-care, as it's meant to be, because it is a holistic practice, community care is a large part of that, because community support is key. We are all social beings. Most of life on this planet is social.
That's right.
And that's at the base level of survival.
That's right.
So any construct that is telling you that you should not prioritize community care in that whole self-care thing, that ain't for you anyway. It's not.
You're right.
Because what they're using to replace community care is all this commercial crap that you can buy. Go to Bali and traumatize them over there with your privilege.
Right.
At some overpriced spa that's killing the environment, or what have you. But I'm going to leave it right there. But bottom line, you're going to need to, I'm going by the average person and what you're able to access.
Right.
Start with what your entitlements that you have through your work. That is going to be your place to start. Look for providers that look like you. You're going to have to parse them out. It's no problem even going, because I'm the queen of checking reviews. I'm sorry.
I love it.
When I'm on Amazon, I read the worst. I filter
reviews
out for the worst reviews.
I want to see them.
I want to see them because I can click off. I can eliminate the ones that I know is just BS, and the ones that are true complaints. I look for verified users.
Yes.
And non-incentivized purchases. When I go on there, and that's for whether it's Amazon, Sephora, or whatever. So you got to get into the practice of checking people's reviews. I check doctors' reviews too.
Yep, that's right. Everybody.
I did that. And yes, I too don't have a whole lot of time under the sun. But on break, I can take 10 minutes, especially if I've already set my mind to, okay, one thing I need to do is I need to find a provider that I can trust, who I can also use as a resource. Because that's what I did. At first, I went to after that debacle with the first therapist, I went to a health coach, and she was the one that gave me the 411. And she's the one that recommended who I have now. One sister to another.
Yeah.
One sister to another. Create rapports. And you've spoken on this. Tia Niki, you've spoken on
Absolutely. The
that.
building of relationships.
Building of
Absolutely.
relationships. You talk about that
Mhm.
a lot.
A lot. Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna have to. I'm an introvert, but I
Me
get out
too,
of.
but you
I
got
gotta force
to.
myself out of that in order. I mean, we're talking about saving your lives,
Exactly.
especially if
And
you're
it's
current.
not the amount of people, it's the quality. You can have you
Exactly.
three good people. You don't need 10. Just three good folks that are
Mm-hmm.
well connected that can help you to
Mm-hmm.
heal, help you to get access to things like she's talking about being in a group where you have
Exactly.
specialists in there and you can actually talk to somebody, you can
Mm-hmm.
actually see somebody and
Mm-hmm.
start the process.
Exactly. Get on WhatsApp groups as well. You can ask
Mm-hmm.
in some of these larger groups, hey, is there a group for something, something in my area? Another
Right.
resource that is free is Therapy for Black Girls. That is online.
I'm on them. Yep.
That
I
is
love
big. That
therapy.
was another resource and a way to check therapists too.
I was so upset because it was none in Merida. When you go on and you search for therapists in your
Mm-hmm.
area,
Mm-hmm.
nothing came up for Merida. I was like, we got work to do.
We do have work to do, because that was one of the things too. I don't know if I had discussed that with you the last time, Thea Niki, when I was talking about what I wanted to create once I get set
Yes.
up over there. And
Yes.
that was my whole point of having a specific small space that's just for women. And I
Absolutely.
want people in the healing modalities specifically for women to deal with that, because I know 1 in 4 Black women have been traumatized in some way, shape, or
Absolutely.
form. So
Mhm.
it is critically important that we have a space that is specifically safe for us. And you need that level of safety in order to fully heal and flower. It's necessary. And
Absolutely.
this is not to say Black men don't need this, or men in general don't need that. But that's something that's for another ministry, for another group, or whoever has the bandwidth for that to address.
Right.
Seriously,
I feel you.
I'm over
I
40.
know. I
I
know it.
haven't been 40 in a minute. I do
Okay.
not have the bandwidth to deal
Believe
with,
me,
I'm working through
it
my
gets
own
thinner.
stuff. Right.
Try
It gets thinner.
55 where I'm at. It get real thin. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's work to be done. And then there's collaborative work that we can do too. But ultimately, that is not my ministry. The ministry is Black women over 40, period. And,
Right.
Women who are trying to get through what I went through, and so on and so forth. So, again,
That's the
those are
space that we
resources.
need the most help in
Right.
because of the fact that the commercialization and mainstream, um, you know,
Right. Oh,
idea and definition of self-care is completely
right.
um it's one dimensional and we're not one dimensional beings.
Oh, exactly. And I do have another list of I do have some resources from one of my earlier blog posts. The NAP
Okay.
ministry is another one. The NAP
Yes.
ministry, that one, Black Girl in OM, Healing Justice Practice Space. Those are other free resources. So y'all,
Please send me your list, copy and paste me your list, and I'll put
okay.
it in the comment section so people
Okay.
can go to, because I'm on therapy for Black girls, but I'm interested.
Okay, I'm gonna text this.
Okay,
I'm gonna text this to you. Yeah, I'm gonna send that to you on WhatsApp.
Okay. This deep and moving conversation has been brought to you by Travel Abroad with Tia Niki. If you haven't, please visit us online. We specialize in traveling and relocation services, as well as Casa de Tia Niki Airbnb. Check us out.
Let's see here.
I have all your other links. We're going to be sharing Tonye's links. You have to follow her. I particularly am a fan of her podcast. I have listened to 2 episodes today, and I'm following her on there. So we're going to post all of Tonye's links to all her goodies. So make sure you follow her. And more than that, interact with the content.
Thank you. Tia Nikki, I just sent that to you via WhatsApp, but that's from my American number, the 630
Okay.
number.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I got both.
okay, so
Okay.
I just sent that to you via that. And I'll be adding more resources to that because in my own research too, I saw that there is a Midwest group that's regional group as well, but I don't have this on here. So I'm currently working on a blog post now and I will add that resource there. But there's a Midwest group. I believe there's one in the South, but I'm not sure exactly where. But it came up
Okay.
when I was doing my research on, ways to self-care without spending money, because that is important. If you're trying to hold on
Word.
to the coin you have, especially with tariffs coming down the line, you
Word.
want to hold on to your resources. So like I said,
Absolutely.
before 15 minutes here, start using the stairs at work. You'll be amazed at how your lung capacity will improve just from carrying your
And the
groceries.
brain fog
Right.
will lift. You can think
Exactly.
clear and come up with your plan and do all your healing.
Exactly.
Y'all got to be
Exactly.
ready to receive it. You want it, but
Hmm.
do you have space? I think
And start
I said earlier. Space.
right. And then also creating healthy meals doesn't
Yes.
necessarily have to be from fresh stuff. I make a lot of soups, especially protein-based soups with garbanzo beans or pinto beans or whatever that are canned.
Right.
You can make delicious meals from that. You can make vegan chili, all of that. That doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. We need to get back to the basics of cooking at
And
home.
not only that can y'all can buy a whole bag of beans for like
Exactly.
and soak them and
Right.
rinse them and throw them in a
Right.
pot.
Yep. And my thing
Yep.
is, you can use the Instant Pot, also known as pressure cooker.
Yep.
That's a way to do things. But for
Yep.
people that are on, especially if you're looking at, and I'm thinking about concerns with costs of utilities, you're watching your bills and stuff like that. The shortcut is using canned stuff to make meals, adding fresh ingredients to that. You cut down on the cooking time, which you also means you cut down on your energy usage as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there are ways to do that. Also,
Absolutely.
yeah, get into using, get that, buy your meats in bulk, buy them when they're on sale, portion them out appropriately. And then also too, cutting down on your consumption of animal protein
That will help a
is
lot.
also saves. You can get protein from a lot of things like
Skip a day.
legumes and all of that. Beans
skip
are
a
very
day.
high. Exactly. Skip a day.
Skip a
Skip
day.
2
This
days.
is a pasta kind of day.
Exactly.
And it's a rice and
Exactly. Go to and I also too, I hardly eat any bread. I mostly
Right.
eat sourdough now, and that
Sourdough.
cuts down
That's the best.
on the bill.
Yep.
That
Yep.
cuts down on the bill, but it also cuts down on my bloating too and discomfort gut wise. Why?
Absolutely.
Because
Inflammation.
on my research, what did I find?
Okay.
Dough conditioners and all kinds of chemicals that supposedly to preserve
Right.
these breads and things on the shelf. Well, guess what? They enter depending on especially your already level of inflammation anyway. That
Mhm.
just exacerbates that.
Absolutely.
I stopped having a good amount of the bloating and discomfort I was having when I stopped eating bread.
Absolutely.
So
You got to let the dough go.
mhm.
Let the dough
That's
go.
right.
Donuts and
Let
all
it
that.
go.
Don't let it go.
It's just
I
eating your
didn't know
money
what was wrong,
anyway.
but ever since I've been here, no, very little bread. A hamburger or chicken burger, turkey burger, whatever. But other than that, no loaves. No loaves.
Mm-mm.
It don't matter where you are, Mexico or America. Dough is dough. Let it go.
No, necessity is the mother of invention.
It
That's what
is.
I'm saying.
That's right. That's right, Tonye. You know what it is.
If you were
Look,
gobbling
I
up all
haven't-
them eggs,
Yes.
cutting that down too.
And the eggs are good for you. This has been an extraordinary conversation. I think that we need to have more of them.
yeah.
I think we need to have more of them within our group of
Mhm.
friends, peers, as well as podcasts like you have, which speak to self-care in its real natural form,
Hmm.
on all levels, mental,
Yeah.
physical, emotional, psychological, all of the levels, because we are whole beings and every part of our life are affected, like you said, childhood patterns, things we cannot identify ourselves.
Hmm.
That's why having a health coach, a specialist, a professional is essential to our well-being and our success,
Hmm.
both internally and whatever we go out and do and give to the world.
Hmm.
I want to invite you back, Tanya, because I have a whole nother sheet of notes that I took that I want to.
No
So,
problem.
yeah, some of those things were abusive relationships, which is
Hmm. Hmm.
um, a whole nother show. The trauma and drama, which I believe are the biggest gatekeepers,
Hmm.
specifically for my clients who trying to break free and move abroad. How
Hmm.
to get out, money being
Hmm.
a big issue, and I do have some ideas.
Hmm.
Men versus versus women when it comes to fears, the impact of change,
Hmm.
which reaches beyond domestic relationships,
Right.
which reach beyond that. So I want to explore that more into partnerships and more mainstays for healthcare,
Hmm.
which allows us to care for others.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest things with the way we treat each other,
Hmm.
specifically us women, is
Exactly.
because we don't have a real model. We haven't done the healing, and
Hmm.
we don't have the capacity, nor are we capable of giving that because we don't possess it ourselves.
Exactly.
So, they all say it all starts at home. And I
Hmm.
think that's what you're preaching, to do the internal work,
Hmm.
you know, to end the generational pain, curses, or dysfunction that we
Hmm.
have in us and we're passing along to our
Exactly.
offspring. We got to stop.
Hmm. We do.
We
The
really,
buck
really
has
do.
to stop with us.
It has to stop with us. Gen X in the house, it ends with us.
Hmm.
Zennials are ending it too. They are fully aware. So I want to invite you back so we can kind of
Okay.
delve into those topics, but I want you to leave us with some of your expertise. I also
Okay.
want to tell you that I love this whatever this you got on, this shiny. That's beautiful. Is this a
I got
chakra?
this. I got this in Merida, child. Can you see it?
Did you?
It's
I
got
love
that
it.
calendar on it.
Oh, I love it.
I
That's
saw it,
so
and it
pretty.
called to me. I am. I've always been a child of the crossroads. I was a child of the crossroads when I was born. Culturally, I'm a child of the crossroads. So the universe just put me at the crossroads. So a lot of, and then my love of anthropology and ancient culture, anything that I see that connects with me, I've learned to open myself up. If something draws me, that means I need to have it. And so I saw this necklace in a shop. I actually bought two. One had a sunflower, because sunflower is also something that calls to me too. But this is the Maya calendar, and a necklace on here. And so that called to me, and I bought it. And I negotiated, I haggled for it a little bit, because that's how
That's
they
how you
do.
gotta do.
That's how
That's
you
good,
do.
baby. You got to
And
do it
that's what
like
it
that.
is, because
I love it.
that's my happy place. And this
I
is
love it.
a healing stone that repels negative energy.
Honey, let me tell you, be keeping them on to repel that, get away. I
Yes,
know that's right.
indeed.
Yes, beautiful. You look beautiful today as
Thank
always.
you.
I like
Thank
your
you.
so I just, we've been on here a minute. We're gonna let our people go.
Mm-hmm.
I thank everybody for tuning in and looking at this interview. Has been very moving, very insightful. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that it provokes a action.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, words are good, but I think they provoke action.
Right.
Other words is just dead energy.
Mm-hmm.
Dead. So we're
That's
not
right.
doing this for entertainment purposes only. We
Mm-mm.
are doing this to show you that there is a way to begin to heal yourself, heal your environment. You're trying to leave, but it all starts inside. This is
Mm-hmm.
Tanya's message, I think. It's the synonymous message that I say you got to do the
Mm-hmm.
work. You
Mm-hmm.
have to invest in yourself. You have to make space for yourself. And we barely got space for anything. The
Mm-hmm.
15-minute nap, the workout at home in your raggedy drawers, because ain't nobody there watching you.
All right.
All of these things have a deep, I think, prolific, ongoing, long lifespan of change in your life. It helps you to manifest, to transform,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. The book that I'm gonna get, you told me what it was. It is called, I wrote it down. Where is it? Where is it? What is it?
The body keeps the
Oh yeah.
score.
The body keeps the score.
And I want
The
to add
body.
one other book that I
Okay.
started reading. It's wonderful. She was on Exodus Summit with you, and
Okay.
that is by Octavia Rahim.
Okay.
Rest
Okay.
is rest is sacred.
Rest. That's it. I remember you saying that. Rest is.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, go and pick up those books. Support Black authors. Support Black women professionals. We are out here making ways for you guys. Tonye is making a way for you to get out of yourself, out of your
Mm-hmm.
own way. A lot of us are in our own way, but that's okay, because it's not like we've been given these
Mm-hmm.
wonderful techniques and skills and tools and stuff when we were young, because our parents didn't know. But now we are in the age
Mm-hmm.
of Aquarius, where we don't have to believe, now we can know. And
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what Tanya is giving you, knowledge on what to do to make the change. So Tanya, before you leave us today, please leave us with some of your wisdom. If you could share something with the viewers that they can do today, right now, right after they get off the live, off the, off the video, to start the ball rolling, what would you offer them?
To start the
Healing,
ball, just
the self-care ball rolling.
I always start
So we
with
look, the
these.
real self-care, not the mainstream self-care. We talking about the real self-care.
Well, not to quote the Matrix, but I will say this: you got to make a decision,
Mm,
got to get a plan,
mm,
and you got to take action. That's what you have to do. And part of that decision making process is awareness. Because if you're zombified and stuck in conditioning, you're just a hamster rolling on a wheel going nowhere. You're like a zombie. You're just putting one foot in front of the other. You've got to interrupt that pattern.
mm.
You've got to interrupt that pattern. Otherwise, you will remain where you are. And foundational to change that you want in your life is self-care. Self-care is liberation for
It
Black
is.
women. It is
You first.
liberation for Black women. Because with self-care, it breaks all of these patterns. Awareness, boundary setting, self-prioritization, learning to put your needs and advocate for yourself. That's self-care. Learning to protect yourself. I'm a huge proponent of self-defense. I grew up doing karate and taekwondo. Ladies, this is a new year. This is a new dawn for Black women. 2025. I am radicalized, and it's time you got that way too.
Yes, absolutely.
We are no longer doing survival mode, honey. It's time to thrive. And the only way to do that is to prioritize your self-care. Because self-care is not one-dimensional. It's multifaceted. It includes your protection, your safety, all of that.
That's right.
Resources, finances. One of the best ways that women insulate themselves from potential danger is having resources. Because you can
Isolation.
afford to change your geolocation. You can pay for security.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to depend on a potentially abusive mate for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
self-care is liberation.
Mm. Liberate yourselves. Liberate yourselves. You got the key. You got on the slippers. You got on the slippers to heal, to heal. You can click your heels and heal. All by reaching out to Tonye. She has blessed us today. Reach out to her. Visit all of her social media. Reach out to her for a consultation. Make the first step in your own liberation. Advocate for yourself. Put you first, if only once for today. Make the call, make the change, seek the professional help that you need in order to even learn how to self-care. Not the mainstream way, the right way and the real way. All right. Tonye, thank you so much. We will be coming back for part 2. We got to talk about these relationships, which I think is huge when it comes to self-care. A lot of us, women, and particularly Black women, are surrendering our whole lives to men and to families and putting our life on the back burner and being unfulfilled and a robot in a relationship. We are bigger and better than that. Get radicalized, as Tonye says. Get radicalized. 2025 is your year. Thank you, Tonye. We will catch up with you next time. I'm going to call you later on, okay?
All right. No problem.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, babe.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this powerful, moving, and inspiring discussion with health coach Tonye Burango. Thank you so much, Tonye, for giving us the one thing that we cannot recoup, and that is your time and your expertise when it comes to the healing process and what it really looks like for women of color versus the mainstream. To find Tonye on social media, she is on LinkedIn at Tonye Burango, Instagram, Tonye Taria Health. She has a business website, thesibylconsortium.com. Bookings and consultations are also available there. Please go over and give her support at her YouTube channel, Tonye the Selfcare Maven. Also, she has a blog site at freedomatthecrossroads.com. She also offers a free self-care guide. You can find the link to that download in the description. She offers a free Pantry Detox guide. You can also find that link in the description or visit her online. Make sure you catch up with Tonye podcast. I have had the pleasure of tuning in, and it is very good. So visit her over at Spotify at the Undomesticated Woman podcast. Once again, she's at Spotify on the Undomestic Woman podcast. Again, we thank Tonye for being with us today.